The lights in the medical bay flickered as another wave of turbulence shook the colony ship New Horizon. Dr. Yuna steadied herself against the wall and checked her instruments one more time. In the bed before her, Mira gripped the sheets with white knuckles. Her breathing came in short bursts. "Almost there," Yuna said in her calmest voice. "Just a few more minutes." Standing beside the bed, Thane paced back and forth. His massive frame filled half the small room. The Valkyrian's dark blue skin glistened with nervous sweat. His sharp teeth clicked together as he tried to stay quiet. Those teeth had torn through enemy armor in a dozen battles, but today they only showed his worry. "Will the child be safe?" Thane asked for the 10th time. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Yuna nodded. "Both mother and baby are healthy. Mixed births always make us nervous, but everything looks normal." Normal was a strange word to use. Nothing about this birth was normal. Humans and Valkyrians had never had children together before. The two species had barely been at peace for 5 years. Most people in the galaxy still saw Valkyrians as monsters. Their warrior culture had terrorized dozens of worlds for centuries, but Mira had fallen in love with Thane during the peace talks. He had saved her life when raiders attacked the diplomatic station. She had nursed him back to health after he was wounded protecting her. Love had grown between them despite everything that said it should not. "Here comes another contraction," Mira gasped. Yuna moved quickly. Her hands worked with practiced skill. She had delivered hundreds of babies in her career, but never one like this. What would a half-human, half-Valkyrian child be like? Would it have Thane's strength and speed? Would it have Mira's gentle nature? Or would it be something entirely new? Outside the medical bay, other colonists gathered in the hallway. Yuna could hear their whispered conversations through the thin walls. Some sounded excited, others sounded worried. A few sounded scared. "I heard Valkyrian babies are born with full teeth," someone said. "My cousin saw one tear through steel cables when it was only 2 months old," another voice added. "What if it goes wild? What if the human side cannot control the Valkyrian side?" Yuna tried to ignore the voices. Fear spread easily and enclosed. Spaces like starships. People always assumed the worst about things they did not understand, but she had to admit her own concerns. Valkyrian children were raised from birth to fight. They learned to hunt before they could walk properly. What happened when you mix that with human emotions and intelligence? "The baby is coming now," Yuna announced. Mira pushed with all her strength. Thane took her hand carefully. His claws could cut through metal, but he held her fingers like they were made of glass. His people showed affection differently than humans. Valkyrians typically fought to prove their love, but Thane had learned human ways. He whispered soft words of encouragement. The baby emerged into the bright lights of the medical bay. Yuna caught the small form and quickly checked for any problems. Her training took over as she cleaned the airways and made sure the child was breathing well. "It's a boy," she said with relief in her voice. The baby's first cry filled the room. It sounded exactly like a human baby. Nothing alien or frightening about it. Just a normal, healthy cry that demanded attention and care. Yuna wrapped the baby in a soft blanket and placed him in Mira's arms. The new mother looked down at her son with tears of joy streaming down her face. Thane leaned over them both. His fierce expression softened completely. "He's beautiful," Mira whispered. Yuna had to agree. The baby looked mostly human. His skin was pale like his mother's. His eyes were dark brown. His hair was black and thick. Only small details showed his Valkyrian heritage. His ears came to slight points. His fingernails were a bit sharper than normal. His grip seemed unusually strong for a newborn. "What will you name him?" Yuna asked. "Day," Mira said without hesitation. "It means great in Korean. My grandmother always said it would bring good fortune." Thane nodded his approval. Valkyrian names were usually based on battle victories or hunting achievements, but he wanted his son to have a human name. A name that spoke of hope instead of war. Over the next few hours, news of the birth spread throughout the ship. Colony Administrator Jin came to visit personally. He was a thin, serious man who rarely smiled, but even he seemed pleased as he looked at the sleeping baby. The first of a new generation, Jin said quietly. Perhaps he will help bridge the gap between our peoples. Yuna made her medical notes while the family rested. She recorded the baby's weight, length, and general health. All normal for a human child. She noted the minor Velkarian features but found nothing concerning. The baby seemed to be developing perfectly, but as she watched little Day sleep in his mother's arms, Yuna wondered what the future would hold. The galaxy was still a dangerous place. Many species still hated and feared each other. War could break out again at any time. This child would grow up caught between two worlds. Would other humans accept him? Would Velkarians see him as weak because of his human blood? Or would he find a way to belong in both cultures? The baby stirred in his sleep and opened his eyes. For just a moment, he seemed to look directly at Yuna. Those dark eyes held an intelligence that seemed too old for a newborn. Then he yawned and went back to sleep. Yuna shivered slightly. Maybe it was just her imagination, but something about that look stayed with her. It was not threatening or dangerous, it was something else entirely. Something that made her want to protect this child with her life. She shook her head and went back to her paperwork. New mothers always made doctors feel protective. It was perfectly natural. Nothing to worry about at all. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance as the colony ship flew toward its new home. In the medical bay, a half-human, half-Velkarian baby slept peacefully. Neither his parents nor the doctor knew that this small innocent child would one day change the entire galaxy. The dangerous half would not be the one with teeth. 5 years had passed since Day's birth. The colony ship New Horizon had found its new home on a planet called Haven. The settlers had built a small town surrounded by forests and mountains. Different species lived together in an uneasy peace. Humans worked alongside Velkarians, Zephyrians, and crystalline beings. Everyone tried to get along, but old fears died hard. Day ran through the settlement's main street, his dark hair bouncing as he moved. He looked like any human child except for his pointed ears and the way he moved with perfect balance. Other children his age could barely walk straight, but Day never stumbled or fell. His father Thane watched from their front porch. The large, Velkarian held a practice sword in his hands. He had been trying to teach his son the ancient warrior ways for months now, but Day showed no interest in fighting or weapons. "Come, little warrior," Thane called out. "Time for your training." Day stopped running and walked slowly back to his father. His small face showed disappointment. He did not want to disappoint his father, but he hated the sword lessons. The weapons felt wrong in his hands. He preferred building things or talking to people. "Do I have to?" Day asked softly. Thane's expression softened. In Velkarian culture, children began combat training as soon as they could walk. It was tradition. It was survival. But his son was different. Day had never shown any aggressive behavior. He cried when he accidentally stepped on insects. He tried to help injured birds. These were not typical Velkarian traits. "Your people have been warriors for thousands of years," Thane explained patiently. "You must learn to protect yourself and others." Day picked up the small wooden sword. It was sized for a child, but it still felt heavy and awkward. He swung it clumsily at the practice target. The sword bounced off harmlessly. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Day said quietly. Before Thane could respond, a small blue figure came running toward them. It was Kira, a young Zephyrian girl. Her species was known for being suspicious and unfriendly to outsiders. Zephyrians rarely trusted anyone outside their own families. But Kira was different around Day. "Day! Day!" she called out excitedly. "Come see what I found." She grabbed his hand and pulled him away from the sword practice. Thane started to object, but something stopped him. He had never seen a Zephyrian child show such enthusiasm for a non-Zephyrian. It was almost impossible according to everything. He knew about their species. Kira led Day to the edge of town where an old crystalline being sat alone under a tree. His name was Ro, and he was ancient even by crystalline standards. His body was made of living rock that glowed with inner light. He had lived for over 300 years and had never trusted organic life forms. Crystalline beings believed that flesh-based creatures were unreliable and dangerous. "He's been sitting here for days," Kira whispered. "Nobody talks to him. My parents said to stay away." But Day walked right up to the old being. He sat down on the ground next to Ro and smiled up at him. The crystalline's rocky face showed surprise. Children usually ran away from him in fear. "Hello," Day said simply. "Are you sad?" Ro stared down at the small, half-human child. In all his centuries of life, no organic being had ever asked about his feelings. Most barely considered crystalline beings to have emotions at all. "I am lonely," Ro admitted after a long pause. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "Me too, sometimes," Dai said. "Want to be friends?" The question was so innocent and direct that Ro did not know how to respond. Friendship between crystalline and organic beings was unheard of. Their lifespans were too different. Their ways of thinking were too alien to each other. But something about this child felt different. When Day looked at him, Ro did not see fear or disgust. He saw genuine interest and kindness. The boy's eyes held no judgment, no hidden agenda, just simple acceptance. "I do not understand friendship," Ro said carefully. "It's easy," Day replied. "Friends care about each other. They talk and play together. They help when someone is hurt or scared." Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Day spent time with Ro every day. He brought the old crystalline small gifts, interesting rocks, colorful flowers, drawings he had made. Ro began to look forward to these visits. For the first time in centuries, he felt connected to another being. But Day's effect was not limited to Ro. Kira began playing with human children, something her parents had forbidden. She defended Day when other Zephyrian children called him names. Her natural suspicion seemed to disappear around him. Security Chief Wu noticed these changes during his daily patrols. He was a careful man who watched everything that happened in the settlement. Unusual behavior patterns always caught his attention. What he saw around Day worried him. The boy was not doing anything wrong. He was not manipulating or controlling anyone. But everywhere he went, old barriers seemed to break down. Species that had been enemies for generations began working together when Day was around. It was as if his presence changed the basic nature of those around him. Wu started keeping detailed notes. He recorded every interaction he observed. Dai talked to the Velcarian guards and they became gentler with prisoners. He played with Zephyrian children and they became more trusting of outsiders. He spent time with crystalline beings and they showed more emotion than anyone thought possible. The boy's mother, Mira, began to notice changes too. She worked as a teacher in the settlement school. Other parents started asking if their children could be in Day's class. They said their kids behaved better after spending time with him. They were kinder to each other and more willing to include children from different species. But it was not just children who were affected. Adult colonists found themselves drawn to the boy. They offered to help his family without being asked. They gave him small gifts for no reason. They smiled when they saw him even when they were having bad days. Dr. Yuna watched all of this with growing concern. She had delivered Day and monitored his health for years. He was perfectly normal physically. His Velcarian traits were minor, slightly better reflexes, a bit more strength than human children his age. Nothing unusual there. The unusual part was how others reacted to him. It reminded her of stories she had heard about human pack bonding, but taken to an extreme level. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to form emotional attachments to almost anything. They made pets of dangerous animals. They formed friendships with species that should be their enemies. They died for causes they believed in. But Day seemed to inspire that same fierce loyalty in others. Non-humans who met him began displaying human-like protective instincts. They formed attachments that went against their own species' nature. Yuna watched Day play with his diverse group of friends. She realized something that made her blood run cold. The dangerous part of this child was not his Velcarian strength or speed. It was his human heart, and that heart was changing everyone around him in ways that could reshape their entire world. 10 years had passed since the colonists arrived on Haven. Day was now 15 years old and had grown tall like his father. His human features were more pronounced, but his Valkyrian heritage showed in his graceful movements and sharp reflexes. He worked part-time at the settlement's engineering station with Hana, learning to repair the machines that kept their community running. The settlement had grown into a proper town. More ships arrived each year, bringing new families from different worlds. What made Haven special was not its resources or location. It was the peace between species that should have been enemies. Visitors often commented on how unusual it was to see such cooperation. But Mira had begun to worry about her son. She watched him from the kitchen window as he walked through town. Everywhere he went, people stopped what they were doing to wave or say hello. Children ran up to hug him. Adults offered him food or small gifts. Even the grumpiest shopkeepers smiled when they saw him. It was not normal. Mira had lived in many settlements throughout her life. She had never seen anything like the devotion people showed her son. It reminded her of how people acted around religious leaders or beloved kings. But Day was just a teenager who fixed machines and helped his neighbors. The morning alarm bells suddenly rang throughout the settlement. 3 short blasts followed by 2 long ones. It was the signal for external threat. Mira dropped her dishes and ran outside. Other colonists were doing the same thing, looking up at the sky with fear in their eyes. High above the planet, 5 pirate ships had dropped out of hyperspace. They were ugly vessels covered with weapons and armor plating. Pirates often attacked small settlements like Haven. They came for supplies, equipment, and people to sell as slaves. Most colonies could not defend themselves against organized raiders. Security Chief Wu activated the settlement's defense systems. Haven had some weapons, but nothing compared to what the pirates carried. The colonists had always relied on their remote location to stay safe. But somehow the pirates had found them. The largest pirate ship broadcast a message across all frequencies. The voice was rough and cruel. "This is Captain Vex of the Blood Fang Consortium. Your little settlement is now under our control. Prepare to surrender all valuable goods and half your population for transport. Anyone who resists will be killed." Panic spread through the town. Parents grabbed their children and ran for the emergency shelters. The few military veterans began organizing defenses, but everyone knew it was hopeless. 5 warships against 1 small settlement meant certain defeat. But then something unexpected happened. Day walked calmly into the town square as everyone else ran for cover. He looked up at the pirate ships and shook his head sadly. "They want to hurt my friends," he said quietly to himself. It was not a threat or a battle cry, just a simple statement of fact. But something in his voice carried across the square. People who were running stopped and turned to look at him. The fear in their eyes began to change into something else. Thane appeared at his son's side. The Valkyrian warrior's blue skin had darkened with battle rage. His claws extended and his teeth were bared. But he was not looking at the sky. He was looking at Day with an expression of absolute loyalty. "What do you need, my son?" Thane asked. "Just ask them to help," Day replied simply. Thane nodded and let out a howling battle cry that echoed across the settlement. It was the traditional Valkyrian call to war, but this time it was not calling his own people to fight. It was calling everyone. The response was immediate and terrifying. Old Ro emerged from his dwelling, his crystalline body blazing with energy. The ancient being had not fought in over a century, but his rock-hard fists could crush steel. Kira appeared with a group of young Zephyrians, their natural stealth abilities making them nearly invisible. Even the peaceful farming families grabbed tools and weapons, but it was not just the fighters who responded. Engineers like Hana began working frantically to overload the settlement's power grid. Doctors prepared combat stimulants and healing supplies. Children who were too young to fight carried messages and supplies. Even the settlement's AI systems began calculating targeting solutions and defensive strategies. What made it truly frightening was the coordination. These different species had been enemies for centuries. They fought in completely different ways and had different strengths and weaknesses. But somehow they began working together like parts of a single organism. The pirates landed their ships outside town, expecting to face scattered resistance from frightened civilians. Instead, they walked into a trap that had been set up in minutes by beings who should not have been able to cooperate at all. Crystalline beings created barriers of living stone that channeled the pirates into killing zones. Zephyrians used their stealth to attack from behind while Valkyrians charged from the front. Humans coordinated everything through their communication systems while providing technical support and medical aid. The battle was over in less than an hour. Most of the pirates surrendered after realizing they were completely outmatched. Those who tried to escape found their ships sabotaged by settlers who had somehow infiltrated their vessels during the fighting. Captain Vex was brought before the settlement's leaders with his hands bound. He was a scarred veteran of dozens of raids, but he looked around at the mixed group of species with confusion and fear. "This is impossible," he said. "Different species don't fight together like this. You people hate each other. It's basic biology." Colony Administrator Jin stepped forward. He was still trying to understand what had happened himself. "We protect our own," he said simply. "Your own?" Vex laughed bitterly. "Half of you aren't even the same species. The other half should be trying to kill each other." But then his eyes fell on Day, who was helping treat wounded settlers nearby. The teenager was moving between different species, checking on everyone equally. Wherever he went, people seemed calmer and more focused. "Who is that boy?" Vex asked quietly. Jin followed his gaze and felt a chill run down his spine. During the entire battle, he had watched beings who barely tolerated each other fight and die for one another. They had moved with perfect coordination despite having no battle plan or shared command structure, and at the center of it all had been Day, not giving orders or leading the fight, just being present, just caring about everyone equally. And somehow, that had been enough to turn a collection of different species into something that fought like a family, protecting their home. Engineer Hana finished her analysis of the battle recordings later that evening. The data showed response times and coordination levels that should have been impossible without years of joint training. But the most disturbing part was how quickly it had all started. The moment Day had said his friends were in danger, every being in the settlement had responded as if their own children were threatened. Species barriers, old hatred, and natural instincts had all disappeared in an instant. Hana looked at her data again and realized the truth that everyone was starting to understand. The most dangerous thing about humans was not their weapons or their tactics. It was their ability to make anyone feel like family. And when family was threatened, there was no limit to what people would do. As night fell over Haven, the settlement celebrated their victory. But some of the older, wiser residents looked at young Day with a mixture of love and fear. They had seen what happened when he needed help. They wondered what would happen as he grew older and stronger. The galaxy was about to find out. Word of Haven's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The story seemed impossible to most who heard it. A small settlement of mixed species had defeated professional pirates without losing a single life. Military experts wanted to know how. Scientists wanted to study the phenomenon. Politicians wanted to control it. 3 months after the battle, a sleek military ship entered Haven's orbit. It carried the banner of the Galactic Defense Force. Commander Tay stepped off the transport with a team of researchers and soldiers. He was a veteran officer who had seen combat on dozens of worlds. He expected to find advanced weapons or secret military technology. Instead, he found a quiet farming town where different species worked together like they had been friends for generations. Dr. Yuna met the military team at the landing pad. She had been dreading this day ever since news of their victory spread. She knew they would come asking questions. She knew they would want to study Day. "Commander Tay," she said formally, "welcome to Haven." The commander looked around at the settlement with sharp eyes. He saw crystalline beings working alongside humans in the fields. Zephyrian children played with Valkyrian youngsters. It should have been impossible, but it looked completely natural. "We're here to investigate your defensive capabilities," Tay said. "Our reports indicate that you achieved perfect coordination between multiple species during combat. We need to understand how." Dr. Yuna led them to the community center where the settlement's leaders had gathered. Colony Administrator Jin looked nervous as he explained what had happened during the pirate attack. He tried to make it sound like good planning and training, but his story had obvious holes. "You're telling me that beings who had never fought together before achieved military coordination in minutes?" Commander Tay asked. "Without a unified command structure or battle plan? People protect what they care about," Jin replied carefully. But Commander Tay was not satisfied with simple explanations. He had his team interview dozens of settlers over the following days. The stories they heard defied everything they knew about interspecies relations. A crystalline engineer named Boren explained how he had modified his body to become a living shield during the battle. "I could not let them hurt the boy," he said simply. When asked which boy he meant, Boren's rocky features softened. He helped me understand what friendship means." A group of Zephyrian traders described how they had used their stealth abilities to sabotage the pirate ships. "We have never fought for non-Zephyrians before," their leader admitted. "But Day is different. He makes us want to be better than we are." Similar stories came from every person they interviewed. All roads led back to the same half-human teenager who worked quietly in the engineering station and helped his neighbors with daily tasks. Commander Tai decided to observe Day directly. He followed the boy through his daily routine, expecting to find evidence of manipulation or control. Instead, he watched Day repair a water pump for an elderly crystalline couple, help Zephyrian children with their homework, and carry groceries for a disabled Valkyrian veteran. There was nothing suspicious about any of it. Day was just being helpful and kind, but the reactions of others were extraordinary. The elderly crystalline couple looked at him like he was their own grandson. The Zephyrian children trusted him completely despite their species' natural paranoia. The Valkyrian veteran would have died for him without question. "Bring me Dr. Yuna," Commander Tay ordered his aide. "I want to see this boy's medical records." Dr. Yuna arrived with a thick file under her arm. She had documented every aspect of Day's development since birth. The records showed nothing unusual for a human-Valkyrian hybrid. His physical abilities were slightly above human normal, but well within expected ranges. His Valkyrian traits are minimal, Dr. Yuna explained. Better reflexes, stronger grip, improved balance. Nothing that would explain what you've observed. Then, what does explain it? Commander Tay demanded. Dr. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She had been studying this question for years. "Have you ever heard of human pack bonding?" she asked finally. Commander Tay nodded. "Humans form emotional attachments unusually easily. It's well documented. Day has that trait, but enhanced by his Valkyrian charisma," Dr. Yuna continued. "Valkyrians are naturally commanding. They inspire loyalty through strength and presence, but Day inspires loyalty through genuine care and affection." "You're saying he makes people love him?" "I'm saying he loves people, and that love is contagious. When someone truly cares about you, really sees you as important and valuable, it changes how you think and feel. Humans do this instinctively, but Day does it with the intensity and focus of a Valkyrian warrior." Commander Tay studied the medical data more carefully. Brain scans showed that Day's emotional processing centers were highly active. His ability to read facial expressions and body language was off the charts. But most importantly, his empathy responses were far above normal human levels. "He doesn't just understand how others feel," Dr. Yuna explained. "He genuinely cares about their well-being. And somehow that caring becomes mutual. People around him start caring about each other the same way." The implications hit Commander Tay like a physical blow. If this trait could spread, if other human-alien hybrids developed similar abilities, it would change everything. Species that had been enemies for millennia might unite under human emotional influence. Ancient conflicts could end overnight. But it would also mean the end of the current galactic order. Governments, military alliances, and trade relationships were all based on the assumption that different species would remain divided by their natural instincts and cultural differences. Commander Tay sent an encrypted message to Galactic Defense Command that night. His report was brief but alarming. Have discovered potential threat to galactic stability. Recommend immediate containment. Within days, representatives from major galactic powers began arriving at Haven. They came from the Christarch Collective, the Zephyrian Trade Federation, and the Valkyrian War Council. Even ancient enemies worked together when faced with something that threatened their established order. Dr. Yuna watched the ships gather in orbit and felt her heart sink. She had delivered Day into the world with her own hands. She had watched him grow from a curious child into a compassionate young man. He had never hurt anyone or tried to control anyone. His only crime was making others feel loved and accepted. But love, it seemed, was the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The Galactic Council was being called into emergency session. For the first time in centuries, every major species would meet to discuss a single individual. Not a warlord or conqueror or terrorist, just a 15-year-old boy who cared too much about everyone around him. As Dr. Yuna looked up at the gathering fleet, she realized that Day's real test was about to begin. The galaxy's most powerful beings were coming to decide his fate. They feared not his claws or teeth, but his human heart that made enemies into family. The question was whether that same heart could save him from the storm that was coming. The Galactic Council had never held an emergency session for a single person before. Representatives from 12 major species gathered on the neutral station, called Unity Point. The meeting chamber was built to hold thousands, but today it felt cramped with tension and fear. High Chancellor Voss of the Christarch Collective spoke first. His crystalline body glowed with cold light as he addressed the assembly. We have all seen the reports from Haven. This hybrid child has somehow united natural enemies in ways that should be impossible. If this trait spreads, our entire civilization could collapse. War Master Keith of the Valkyrian Council slammed his fist on the table. The boy has done nothing wrong. He helps his neighbors and cares for others. Since when is kindness a crime? Since it threatens the balance of power, replied Trade Minister Nala of the Zephyrian Federation. Our economies depend on species remaining separate. Our governments exist because people fear each other more than they trust each other. This child changes that equation. The debate raged for hours. Some argued that Dai should be studied to understand his abilities. Others wanted him contained on a remote world where his influence could not spread. A few extreme voices called for his elimination before he could destabilize the galaxy. But while the council argued, Day continued his normal life on Haven. He went to work with Engineer Hana, helped his neighbors, and played with his friends. He knew that important people were discussing his future, but he tried not to worry about things he could not control. The settlers of Haven knew what was happening. They could see the warships gathering in orbit. They understood that their peaceful community was about to be destroyed by beings who feared what they had built together. Old Ro found Day sitting alone by the river one evening. The ancient crystalline being had become like a grandfather to the boy over the years. His rocky features showed deep concern. They want to take you away, Ro said gently. Day nodded. He had figured that out already. I know. They're scared of me. Are you afraid? Day thought about it carefully. Not for me, but I'm scared for everyone else. My friends might get hurt trying to protect me. It was a very human response. Most species would be concerned about their own survival first, but Day's immediate worry was for others. That simple difference was what made him so dangerous to the established order. The next morning, Commander Tay landed on Haven with official documents from the Galactic Council. His face was grim as he approached the settlement's leaders. Behind him marched 24 heavily armed soldiers. By order of the emergency session, the hybrid known as Dai must be removed from this settlement immediately, Tay announced. He will be transported to a secure facility for study and containment. The reaction was instant and terrifying. Every being in the settlement stopped what they were doing and turned toward the soldiers. Humans, Valkyrians, Zephyrians, and crystalline beings all wore the same expression of protective fury. Thane stepped forward, his blue skin dark with rage. You will not take my son. This is not a request, Commander Tay replied. The Council has voted. The hybrid is too dangerous to remain free. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of attacking the soldiers, the settlers began to gather in the town square. They formed a circle around Day with their bodies. Parents held their children. Workers carried their tools. Even the elderly and injured joined the protective barrier. They were not threatening violence. They were simply making it clear that any attempt to take Day would have to go through all of them. Commander Tay looked at the faces surrounding him. These were not soldiers or fanatics. They were ordinary people who had chosen to risk everything for one boy. The devotion in their eyes was both beautiful and terrifying. "Stand aside," he ordered. "I don't want to hurt anyone." "Then don't," said Dr. Yuna as she stepped forward. "You have ships and weapons and authority, but you don't have the right to destroy what we've built here." "What you've built is dangerous," Tay replied. "Natural enemies are not supposed to live together like this. It goes against millions of years of evolution." "Maybe evolution was wrong," said a voice from behind him. Commander Tay turned to see Day walking toward them. The boy looked calm despite the weapons pointed at him. His dark eyes held no fear or anger, only sadness that things had come to this point. "I'll go with you," Day said quietly. "But only if you promise not to hurt my friends." The settlers began to protest, but Day raised his hand for silence. "I won't let people die because of me. That's not what friends do." But as Day stepped toward the soldiers, something remarkable happened. Commander Tay felt tears running down his face. He had not cried in 20 years, but something about the boy's willingness to sacrifice himself touched a part of his heart he thought was dead. Around him, his soldiers lowered their weapons. They could not bring themselves to arrest someone who cared more about others than himself. Even the ship crews in orbit began sending messages questioning their orders. "This is exactly what they were afraid of," Commander Tay whispered to himself. Day heard him and nodded sadly. "I know, but I can't help who I am." Commander Tay looked around at the mixed crowd of species standing together. He thought about his own crew, who had served together for years but never trusted each other completely. He thought about the wars and conflicts he had seen throughout his career, all the hatred and fear that kept the galaxy divided. Then he thought about what the galaxy might look like if more places were like Haven. Commander Tay made a decision that would change his life forever. He turned to his soldiers and gave them an order they never expected to hear. "Stand down," he said, firmly. "We're going home." "Sir?" his lieutenant asked in confusion. "I said stand down. The boy is not a threat to galactic security. He's exactly what galactic security should be protecting." The news of the failed arrest spread across the galaxy within hours. Some called it mutiny. Others called it the beginning of a new age. But the real change started when Day himself addressed the galaxy through the communication networks. He did not threaten or demand. He simply spoke to individuals rather than governments. He told them about his friends on Haven. He showed them what life could be like when people chose to care about each other instead of fear each other. The message was translated into hundreds of languages and broadcast on millions of worlds. It reached soldiers who were tired of fighting wars they did not understand. It reached workers who dreamed of better lives for their children. It reached ordinary people who wanted to believe that the universe could be kind. Colony after colony began reporting the same phenomenon. Natural enemies were working together. Old grudges were being forgotten. People were choosing connection over conflict. The Galactic Council tried to stop the spread, but it was too late. You cannot arrest an idea whose time has come. You cannot contain hope once it has been set free. Years later, historians would mark this as the beginning of the Great Peace. But for Day, it was simply the day he learned that the most powerful force in the universe was not weapons or technology or political authority. It was the simple human truth that everyone wants to belong somewhere. Everyone wants to matter to someone. Everyone wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. The galaxy had spent millennia fearing the wrong things about humans. They feared human weapons and human cunning and human ambition. But the real power of humanity was much simpler and much more dangerous. Humans could make anyone feel like family, And when people felt like family, there was nothing they would not do for each other. The dangerous half had never been the one with teeth.